see here, y'all give me a couple of seconds. Let me get this Wi-Fi working in here. Guess I don't need this other, and this AC is cranking. I kind of want to cut it off, but sometimes when you're talking, you end up getting hot. But I'm gonna try to cut that AC off, y'all, and see if this Wi-Fi connect for me. Real quick here. See if this here. And Amber, God bless you. Now I'm gonna try to read and talk at the same time, but I was I was on the plane, so I couldn't really participate in my chat that I did earlier on the Cam Newton conversation. And on there, I talked for a long time just because I gave the interview 2.5 hours of my life. A lot of people don't realize that I actually sat down and listened to the entire thing because I wanted a full perspective. But I saw some comments from some women talking about that I was diminishing her and like putting her down. And what I was doing was explaining to you the difference between the male mind and the woman's mind. Is when you're talking to a man, what your clothes are saying is so loud that he might not be able to hear you. So what I'm expressing is that as a man, I could not hear what she was saying because of what she had on. And it was so many women who was like, everything she said was on point, all of this right here. And that's the point. You can hear her as a woman because you're a woman. But she was talking to a man. And so when you're talking to a man, you can't go talk to a man and try to have a serious conversation dressed like a stripper on her off day or what she goes into the office with on. And that's the point. It's not about what you're saying. It's like a homeless person could tell us how to mop our floors. But how much attention are we listening to someone who doesn't have what we want to have or not looking or living how we want to live? And that was the point. Is Cam was asking her, who in your life is married? And he was kind of drawing a parallel or a comparison to say, I was raised in a household with a mother and a father. And he was asking her, like, how were you raised? And basically what he was saying in so many words was like, I'm not necessarily listening to your degree, or like, I get you got a degree, but where's your personal life experience come from? And that's the point. And so many people get mad, and I used to get mad too. I used to get mad when I always get mad when athletes say, oh, you never played at this level. You can't talk to me. You can't tell me nothing because you didn't play at this level. And I would get mad about that, get in my feelings, but then I realized they have a point. And so what I'm saying is that's what you have to realize is my point is from a male perspective. Every woman heard the young lady, Dr. Bryant, every woman heard what she was saying. And every woman wanted what she said to be said to Cam, to be said to him. And they wanted that. And you can hear that. But for me, I'm not just looking at the interview of what did Cam get told, or was Cam told about himself? Was he put in place? I'm looking at it also as a professional who advises people. And that's why I said in my dissertation of sorts is that that's why I'm not going to go talk to a woman. If I went to talk to a woman and I had my print showing, print meaning my meat leg, how much is that woman gonna feel like this conversation is appropriate and like it's being heard? And that's what the women who watched the interview did not think about is you have to think about as a woman, if you were watching the interview, if you was watching the interview and you seen a man and you looking at his print, how much would you hear him say if you could see his print in his pants? You'll be looking at the interview and like, okay, man, he's saying some good stuff, but man, got that print right there with the legs open. And so that's what you have to say. And you have to understand that when you analyzing something, and this is for professionals, is you got to realize that for professionals, you have to understand how you present yourself and are you being heard. And for women, you got to realize that the way a man perceives something is going to be different than the way a woman perceives something. And so that's what was misunderstood with my video that I did. There was a lot of women in their feelings because of me talking about how she was dressed and how she was presenting herself and how she was doing the interview. And you know, her being, I'm thinking a therapist also has to understand that, yeah, she's being interviewed, but she's giving advice. And so when you giving advice, you have to be able to ask more questions. You got to be able to listen longer and listen more and talk less. And so that's why the interview didn't land for me, and we'll see if it landed for Cam Newton. You know, everything she said to him was the truth. And in my dissertation, I said that everything she said was the truth. But we can speak the truth, but it depends on where we are when we speaking it. And so it's a lot of people that can tell you the truth, but if they not what you looking up to, if they're not where you want to be, if they're not living what they're telling you to live, then you're not going to receive it the same way. And so that's what you have to realize and understand. And the male mind is different than the female mind, Laura. So, and you saying that in a sense of like, okay, you could listen to a conversation while you looking at a man print, but we all know that's a lie. But you saying it for the sake of argument. And it's not that somebody say she wasn't flirting. I didn't think she was flirting either, but it probably was just, you know, maybe last minute fashion choice. And so this the thing is like, the thing about it is accountability goes both ways. And we just want men to be held accountable, but you don't want a woman to be held accountable. It got to go both ways. And so if you watch my video that I talked about that, I explained Cam's situation. And a lot of that goes into that. A lot of that goes into that with him being a pro athlete, him rebelling from what he has been taught, him going on a decline. So it's easy to sit and say, oh, Cam is this and Cam is that. But you also got to seek to understand. You got to understand that what Cam has done with his life, there's men without 1% of his money doing the same thing. There's men without 1% of his pressure doing the same thing. There's women who are not seeking to break up homes with multiple children's fathers. There's a lot of women who have two children's fathers, 3 children's fathers. And I have family members very close to me with 2, 3, 4 children's fathers, and they looking for love. So the same thing goes, and I'm the first one to hold men accountable and to call that out, but I also seek to understand and see where somebody coming from. And that's, and me personally, like they say, I can't hear you because your actions are so loud. That's what you have to realize is in a conversation like that, I couldn't really hear what she was saying as good as what she was saying was. So I noticed a lot of women could hear it because you're a woman. And a lot of women could tell that, oh, this is good, this need to be said. And when I heard that, I said the same thing. But at the same time, I understand a lot of it could fall on deaf ears. And I could tell by the questions that Cam was asking that a lot of what she was saying could fall on deaf ears. But then also too, it was uncomfortable for him, which is a space he needed to be in. He needed to feel it, but it was uncomfortable for him. And she said those things as well, knowing that there would be a lot of amens in the peanut gallery from women that would jump on that bandwagon and say, yeah, yeah, tell them, tell them, tell them. But also, when you're a multimillionaire and when you're a pro athlete, you typically around yes men. You typically around, and even the people who love you the most may become yes men because you are the hand that feeds them. So he could be in a place where his people who really, really know and love him may not be giving him the real truth because he bought them a house or because he is who they come to when they're strapped financially. And so my thing is not just about the Cam Newton situation and him having multiple children, because what's understood don't need to be explained. We already get that. But I'm also saying to the women that when you're trying to reach a man, you got to also make sure how he views you and where you coming from and how he looking at you. So in that situation right there, I couldn't even hear what was being said just because of the presentation and trying to listen. But if I was a woman and I'm not paying attention to that, like I seen a lady say in a comment that she didn't even notice the lady outfit. But I guarantee you, like I sent it to my mentee, who's 30 years old, and the first thing he said was, wow, she got them things out, and talking about her breasts. And that's the difference between the male and the female mind. And that's what got to be understood. So you got to realize that. And understand that, that's where we coming from. It sounds like somebody dog coming in my room. Lock that darn door. And Keela, that's the point of my channel, is giving the male perspective. And so that's the whole point of it, is being an articulate man and articulating the thoughts and feelings of men, grown boys and grown men, from having been both. So you have to realize that and understand that when you, and that's the thing that is holding us back in society. And that's what I see, because so I did the video on the reaction, and I noticed that a lot of women thought I was gonna go one way and thought I was just gonna jump on, Cam's issues and his situation. And I addressed that, and more so than just him having multiple mothers of his children, but also the way he carried himself towards the end of his NFL career, and just address things that I see that he's dealing with as a man and what's not being taken into consideration, which is not an excuse, it's an explanation. Because one thing that I've learned is we can't really judge if we haven't walked in somebody's shoes. And the same thing is what I was saying about with the doctor. Like with the way that she was dressed, to me, it said something like, well, maybe it's something from her past. Maybe it's something, because I seen a bunch of pictures like that. Like maybe it's something from her past, from her childhood, that makes her dress, like makes her want to dress revealing. And that is like her fashion or what have you. And so that's the thing of seeking to understand when you're looking at something, and understand that when you trying to reach somebody, you gotta have that understanding in order to get through to them. But the way that it was done, I don't think that it was beneficial. And the point of these conversations is for women to hear men and for men to hear women, and for us to seek to understand what the opposite sex is saying. And that's where we going wrong at. So, I held Cam accountable, like my thing. Oh, okay, let me see something real quick. Okay, let me see something real quick. My live had froze. Somebody had called me. Live had froze. And so I hold myself accountable in everything. And when I'm looking at something, I'm reading it, I'm analyzing it, and I'm gonna hold each person accountable. So for me, it wasn't about just, oh, let's just bash Cam. And we also know that our school teachers, our principals, our presidents, it's so many men with multiple children from multiple women. Like we can't sit here and act like that's something new. Like that's like, oh wow, my goodness. It's not like we was talking about Cam having 50 million domestic violence cases. We literally talking about a multi-millionaire who was in 3 different relationships that was unprotected sex, and the women got pregnant. And it's not to minimize it, it's just the reality of it, that a lot of women would have 3 different child's father if they did not go to the clinic or if they weren't on birth control. Like it's not like we talking about something where we talking about a multi-millionaire man who can literally sleep with nearly any woman walking. There's other NFL players with like 6, 7, 8, 9 baby mamas. And so it's not like we was talking about something that was just so deep and that was just so unheard of. Like I know so many guys who have never made $1 million in a year who have 3 baby moms and never made $1 million in a year. Like it is something that we have to recognize and address. We can't excuse it away, but at the same time, accountability has to be on both sides. Because what does it say about a woman who will have unprotected sex with a man who she knows he already has other baby moms, mothers of children? Like there's accountability on both sides. And that's what you have to realize, is it's not just a one-sided street. And what does it say? And then somebody was like, oh, Tony, criticizing a woman who is doing what he teaches. I've never told a woman to walk around with all of her breast out. I've never told a woman to leave a man because he wasn't at his peak income yet. I've never told a woman to carry herself, to curse, to say the name of God and then also be cursing, and to which to me is like blasphemy. Like that is a slap in the face of God when you cursing and you talking about God and you quoting scripture. Like that throw me all the way off. So no, the doctor is not the type of woman that I talk about in the least. And so you got to realize and understand, you got to know what you're talking about, and you got to get out your feelings just somebody because you want somebody to get told but don't want to tell yourself. And then there was a lady talking about that I'm jealous because she has a doctorate, because people with doctorates and I don't have a doctorate, and I want to be seen on the same level. If you know God and you know anything about God, then you know that man-made system means nothing. There's nothing for me to be jealous of something that I can easily go do. My mother-in-law, who I am just as smart as, and most likely smarter than, no offense, has a doctorate. My clients are doctors. I have clients who are psychotherapists, who are psychiatrists, who are surgeons. So why would I be jealous of someone's credentials when the same university that's available to anybody else is available to me? That right there is stupid. Like that sounds, that's crazy. But it's just, I call a spade a spade. And my point is that somebody's credentials from man means nothing. And that a person could have all the credentials in the world, but if they're not really walking with God, and God is not leading and ordering their steps, and what's coming out of their mouth is laced also with curse words and filth, then it is no power in it. So that's the point of it, is that stuff means nothing. But we as Americans especially, and really people all over the world, but Americans especially, we put so much stock on man-made credentials. Like we put so much on it where for certain jobs it's required. But outside of that, it don't really mean nothing. And so that's the thing, is that you got to realize and understand that. And it's not that I'm belittling her achievements, it's I'm telling the truth about it. I interviewed a doctor on my channel who literally said out of her mouth that she went and got a doctorate, but it meant nothing. That it just was, what you have to understand is that a going to take a test and passing tests is not an achievement. And that is the reason why it's so many black people that are unsuccessful after having a degree, because you think that getting a degree and getting a master's and getting a doctorate defines you. You think that, and that's why I minimize it so that you don't maximize it, because you actually majoring in the minors. And people who are insecure themselves are offended by someone else's confidence or someone else's truth. So I'm not offended by or intimidated by a doctor, because in my very own life, and this is just me telling the truth, I earn over $1 million a year. When I looked at the scale of what doctors earn, the highest earning doctor, other than just being in a certain city and having a certain amount of clients, but based on like salary, the highest earning doctor is like 400 and something thousand dollars. So I have nothing to be jealous of when I earn over $1 million a year and I work for myself and I set my own hours. There's no reason to be jealous. But if you think that I am jealous, that's because of you're listening from your insecurity, because you want your degree to make you special. And when someone doesn't put you on a pedestal because of your degree, then you get upset and say, oh, you're a hater and you're jealous because you should be putting me on a pedestal and praising me for going to school and going through a process that was created to make us factory workers. You basically saying you should be giving me credit for learning how to take a test and how to get through a test. So that's where you have to understand that is that doesn't mean everything. No, Keela, if you, Keela saying no, is where you said she was a life coach and she can't give therapy. That's where you listen wrong. And that's why you have to learn to shut up and listen instead of listening to reply, instead of listening to understand. What I said in the video is that a life coach cannot give therapy, but she has a training where she is training people to be a hybrid coach, to be a life coach and a therapist, or to be a therapist and a life coach. And what I was saying is a therapist can do that, but a life coach cannot do that. A life coach cannot touch on therapy topics and therapy things. I wasn't even speaking about her, but because you was listening while you were reading comments, you put words in my mouth. And that's the point of listening. And there was some people who were like, oh, Tony didn't watch the whole video. I watched the entire 2 hours and 36 minutes or 32 minutes, all the way through the end, to where when they stood up and hugged, I watched every single minute. Because if I was gonna do an analysis of it based on the amount of people that wrote me about it, which I don't see, the thing about it is I personally don't even understand why someone would care what I think about a situation. But I heard a guy say one time, if 3 people ask you the same question, turn it into an online course. Now that was a different business lesson he was teaching. But my thing is, if multiple people say, Tony, can you speak on the Cam Newton discussion? Then I'm like, okay. And I tell my wife all the time, because I was talking to her yesterday. No, the word is shut up. That's a adult word, is to be quiet. It's not a curse word. But that's the thing, is you got to get out your feelings, and especially when you over here. And that's the problem right now with our society, is everybody is in their feelings. Everybody is, and it's so many women and men who is creating this sector of single and bitter instead of single and happy, because you in your feelings. Because so here I am, I said the word shut up, and you offended by that when kids say the word, but you weren't offended by people sitting on a podcast quoting scripture and talking about the spirit and being obedient to the spirit, but then the next sentence cursing. And so that's what you have to understand about that. And the world is not built for degrees to open doors. That's what man created. God didn't create a degree. And that's why I'm trying to help people get through to this and understand this, is you have to realize that when God calls you, he qualifies you. So the same way I became a millionaire without a degree, any one of God's children can do that. But you got to believe that you can do that and stop thinking that you have to have man's approval to be able to be somebody, to go somewhere. You got to realize that. And so that's the point of this right here, is seek to understand and listen to understand instead of just to reply. And that's why sometimes I take and I don't listen to a whole thing. But with this, because of the amount of people that wrote me, I took and listened to it the whole 2.5 hours. And that's the realization of it. And bold and out loud, we don't put down degrees in the black community because the number one degree getting demographic is black women. It's actually white people who teach you that you don't need a degree. And God did not create education. Man created the school system. God created wisdom. So stay out the comments not knowing what you're talking about. When you read the book of Proverbs, Glenn Ross, appreciate you. Keep them together. When you read the book of Proverbs, God doesn't tell you to go get man certifications. He said, cry out for wisdom. He said, wisdom crying in the streets. He said, wisdom is looking for you. What you have to understand is you can get knowledge from a book and you can get experience from life, but wisdom comes from God. And with wisdom, you're able to create an abundant life. And with an abundant life, you will have abundance in every area of life when you get God's wisdom. When I was in college, and I was in college for 8 years, and I'm going through, and I'm just like, man, this is not helping me in my life. Like, this is not benefiting me in my life. And I was working a job after I stopped playing football in college. I'm working a job and I'm making $20,000. When I started seeking God's wisdom, I started working in my purpose. And outside of my job, which was working at the group home, I started earning 40,000 and then 60,000. And then I got off of my job. And the first year working in my purpose, 2011, and it could have been 2012, I made $147,000. And I was 27 or 28 years old. And I still had not completed my college degree, but I went and got God's wisdom. So that's my point, is that we have been trapped and bamboozled by man's society to think that just because someone has letters before or after their name, that and those letters could be Rev. The letters don't have to be something that is like doctor or PhD. The letters could be Rev. The letters could be something about being a teacher, but we don't put enough on what God gives you. That there are people who are illiterate, who can't even read and write, but have more wisdom than 1,000 professors. And that's what you have to understand when I'm talking about that. So it's not me diminishing someone with a doctorate degree. It's not me diminishing someone who has that, because for one, I respect the amount of work that a person does to get a doctorate. But I also know people with a doctorate who did majority of it online and somebody else did the work for them. I also know people with a doctorate who it is a honorary doctorate. I also look at the documentary Dr. Death. Look at the documentary Dr. Death. Here you have a lot of people who lost their life to an actual surgeon, And so you have to realize and understand that we can't put so much stock on letters before or after a name. And that's what I'm talking about. And never, I'm gonna be honest with you, and just to put it frank, you'll never see me hating on anybody or diminishing anybody. I'm gonna speak my truth that comes from the wisdom of God and from the way I perceive things, but never am I diminishing someone or hating on someone, because when I started walking with God fully, God gave me everything that a human could want. Like as a man who is healthy, who is in good health, And not only can I look at myself and thank God for where he's brought me, but you could look at me and tell that I'm not downtrodden and I'm not depressed and I'm not beaten up by the world, but that God has been good. And so having a wife of 17 years and having two sons with my wife, and those being my only two children in the world, and me having been married to my wife the entire time with my children and not having gone through a divorce, and me being able to live my purpose and earn a good living, I could not, it would be blasphemous for me to discredit someone or diminish someone or be jealous of someone. That's to walk with God fully and be jealous of someone else. That's an oxymoron. Like it it's impossible when you walking with God, because you are fulfilled and you have what you need, how you need it, when you need it, where you need it. But hey, and I talk long-winded on my teachings and things of that nature when I'm not in an interview setting, because I realize that there's a lot of people who have not read the book of Proverbs, who have not cried out for wisdom, who are just on the beginning of that journey. And that's what you got to realize. Yeah. And when you watch my video, like what One Race, the Human Race said, I said on the video that everything the doctor said to Cam needed to be said. But I question if it fell on deaf ears because of her presentation and because of his mindset and how he views her. And so what I was trying to help women understand is that men, especially men who played sports, want you to show them better than you can tell them. So the same way Cam Newton would not listen to me if I try to tell him how a quarterback should drop back in the pocket and how a quarterback should read the defense and when a quarterback should run and when a quarterback should throw. If I went to tell Cam Newton that, he would laugh in my face because he played at the highest possible level. So if you pay attention to what was being said, he kind of was saying, how are you saying this stuff and how can you tell me this stuff if you weren't raised by your mother and father being married and seeing a healthy and happy marriage? And how do you know from life, not just from your degree, but from life, how do you know what you're talking about? And people get so upset when people want to hold us in our space, meaning when people want to hold us accountable. So if somebody comes to me and they say, well, Tony, how can you tell me how to be a doctor, how to be a surgeon, and you've never been one? I'm going to be like, you know what, you're right. I'm not going to say, well, I have clients who are surgeons, so that's how I can tell you how to be surgeons. Well, I got friends who's surgeons, so that's how I could tell you how to be a surgeon. No, there's a certain group of people that they want to know that you have done what you're saying you've done. And that's why I tell my clients who they hire people they hire people who want to teach them how to build a following, but they've never implemented what they're teaching. Because if what you are teaching works, you should be able to go out into the world and implement it if what you're teaching works. So that's why me teaching on marriage and healthy relationships, I'm living it in my real life. And I have to challenge myself every day to make sure I'm living what I'm teaching. Because if what I'm saying holds any weight and if what I'm saying is true, I should be able to go into the world and be married and be happy. But if I can't go into the world and be married and be happy, and I'm not Apostle Paul, it's different for Apostle Paul because he literally was a vessel of God. Like God literally used him to write books of the Bible that will never be, that cannot be altered, that cannot be changed, and to write it without typos and grammar errors. That in itself lets you know that God's hand is on the Bible. Because if you've ever read a book today, a modern book, nonfiction or fiction, you're going to see grammar errors and typos. But when you read the Holy Bible, no matter what version of it or where you're reading it, you never see a typo. And that lets you know it's God breathed. So a lot of times people try to compare themselves to Apostle Paul, but none of us are Apostle Paul. None of us are going to be a martyr for Christ the way Apostle Paul was. None of us are being used in the way that Apostle Paul was. And so that's the same thing. It's kind of like if somebody came to you, if you're a woman and another woman came to you and she telling you how to do something in your life that she continuously keeps failing at. Like if a woman come to you and she's settling for this man who is putting hands on her and cheating on her, and she come criticizing your relationship, and she tell you this what you got to do in your relationship, and this how you need to make it work, and this how you win a man love, you're gonna look at her and be like, huh? What are you talking about? And every single thing she just said to you was absolutely true. Like it all was rooted in truth. Like it all really was wisdom. But because of her situation, you're not really computing what she's saying because she's not living it herself. And that's what I try to tell y'all is that we just live in the show me state in our world. And you, instead of getting mad when you're single and you getting mad because people don't want to hear your relationship advice, stop giving relationship advice. Like, instead of getting mad that people don't want to hear you give financial advice if you're broke, just stop giving financial advice. Give how to be broke advice. If you're single and you're happy, give how to be single and happy advice. But you can't give advice that you haven't lived or you're not living, even if you have read a book about it. And that's what has to be understood, because like I tell people all the time, I can only tell you what it takes to be married 17 years. I can't tell you what it takes to be married 20 years. I can't tell you what it takes to be married 30 years. Although it could be rooted in principle and it could be principle based, I can't tell you what it takes, because I know that my wife and I are gonna go through a test every single year of marriage, and every single test will teach me something different. And that's why I be so hard on single people who are giving relationship advice. I say, listen, you can tell someone what went wrong in your relationship and why it did not work. But until you get in a relationship and you actually make it work, you can't tell someone how to make a relationship work, because you don't know if what you're telling them is actually able to be implemented. And so that in essence was kind of the point Cam was trying to make to the doctor. He was and the same way people say that Cam got offended by what she was saying to him, she got offended by his questions to her. Because again, we have this sensitive society to where, like, if somebody come to ask me, well, Tony, what are you, you never played in the NBA, how are you a life coach for an NBA team? I have to be real about that and say, you know what, I'm 100% not qualified to talk to them about X's and O's. And I remember James Harden, I was working with his team, he told that to somebody. He was like, man, he never even taught basketball. But what he didn't realize is I wasn't qualified to talk basketball. I'm not Tracy McGrady. Like, I'm not qualified to tell James Harden how to play basketball. But I could tell him and the other teammates how to be real men, how to be a mature man in the world. And so that's what we got to realize and understand. Yeah, I'm down here in New York. I don't know where I'm at, but It's ambulance, which I know it's ambulance. For all y'all see there, that's why you can't get nobody to listen to you. You talking about ambulance. I know it is ambulance, but I just chose. I think they say this might be Harlem, but I just mapped to where my meeting at tomorrow. I got a meeting up here looking at venues and stuff for like some quarterly trainings. And so I have a big announcement tomorrow, which I can't really talk about. It's just an opportunity. There's an opportunity for my supporters, not the haters in the comments, but for my supporters. An announcement come out at 1 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. But something I'm doing in October 12th and 13th is helping mental health professionals like the doctor, which she don't need help in that because she already built her. Y'all forgive me. When somebody called me and cut my phone out. Cut my phone out. I don't know anything about these New York boroughs. My bad. I don't know nothing about the New York boroughs, and I really do not like New York. But New York is my largest following in the U.S. So out of every social media network, New York is my largest following. I don't know if it's just like, I don't know why. Especially me being from the South and being country. And y'all done been to Tennessee. I've done an event in Nashville. And I done visited Nashville a few times. But I'm up here looking at some venues for quarterly events for mental health professionals and about personal brand building. And I'll be doing it for other people, but it's been a lot of mental health professionals hiring me to help them expand their business because they just, they tired of working for just like a certain company or a certain environments, and they want to get online and do those things. So I'm gonna be doing a live training just so we can do Q&A and just look at some live stuff on the board. So that's the thing. And yep, Joya, we'll have some all over the country. So I'll be there for you. Multifaceted mom. And that's the thing is, somebody say he tried her best to discredit her, but Cam wasn't trying to discredit her. He was trying to get to the root of her understanding of her knowledge, her perceived knowledge, like what she's teaching. He was like, where have you seen this work? Because people are criticizing Cam for having multiple children's moms, but he's like, hey, where have you seen this work? Like, does life work this way? Like, yeah, I've seen my parents be married or what have you, but even with our parents, they don't oftentimes bring us behind the scenes. They don't bring us behind the scenes. So he was like, if this works and what you're saying, why hasn't it worked for you? Like, can you make it work? Like, do you live by your teachings? And that's what I was trying to help people understand, is that with the young lady in the interview, I'm analyzing both sides because I'm also in her role in real life. But I also work with people like Cam in real life, meaning former athletes and also current athletes. So I understand their makeup and their mindset and what they go through and their stressors and how they view the world. And so that's why I analyze it from both perspectives. And it was a lot of women that I seen in the comments talking about, I was just talking about her outfit and trying to discredit her. If an observation discredits someone, then that means that what they did, they discredited themselves. But I can't discredit anybody. All I can do is observe. And if I observe, then That's the thing. And a lot of people was talking about the Nick Cannon thing. I didn't I didn't see the Nick Cannon interview. I didn't even know there was a interview with Nick Cannon. But one thing I know too as a man, which some of these men may not realize, is a lot of them are inviting these women on their shows because they just intrigued by them from online and they want to see them in person, smell them in person, shake their hand. Men with power will do those things. Like they will get perceived powerful women or alluring women or women with a certain spirit on them. They'll get them in person just to see them. It ain't even that they want to hear what they got to talk about. But then also there's people who got publicists. I don't know what the message in the ceiling says, but also because of different ways out there, I try not to give out those information where I be at, because sometimes some people might want to pull up. But and ironically, when I checked in, the lady at the front desk, she followed me online. She knew who I was. So it's a small world. So I try to, be a little discreet. Not that I don't like meeting people or nothing like that, but just out of safety, because you never know, it might be an angered boyfriend or girlfriend that get mad with me and want to pull up on me. But got a VIP dinner here tonight, which I just randomly threw this together for some people to come together so we could talk about branding and going to the next level. And so we got that dinner tonight at 7:30 here in New York City. But I'm gonna go down and get me a little bite to eat. Before that, man, I got ops all over the world. Cause when you tell the truth, people get mad, man. People get mad and get in their feelings. But one thing about me is, if you come on my page where it's for my voice, and you attack me personally, I'm gonna virtually slap you by hitting that block button. Point blank period. I'm gonna block you in a heartbeat, because this my page, this my space to share my unadulterated, unfiltered thoughts, and I won't be shamed or silenced about my viewpoint and my perspective and what I was saying about that interview. And it's also my fault, because it's a lot of things that people ask me to look into, and I already know that what I'm looking at is not going to be where I have my head at. Like, it's not the level of thinking that I'm trying to live on, and I already know it's gonna take me somewhere that I don't even want to be. And so basically what I was saying is that I got nothing from the interview. And although Cam was told what he needed to be told, I don't think it came from the right source. And one lady was like, does Tony prefer that he would have been interviewed? Not that I prefer that I would have been interviewed, but it would have landed totally different, because the questions that Cam asked her, when he asked me, he would have heard, yes, I'm a man like you. Yes, I can get women like you. But yes, I chose to get married at 23 years old, and I've been married for 17 years, and I work on myself every day to make it work. And yes, I have 2 sons, and yes, my 2 sons live in the house with me. And yes, I'm making it work with a wife and our children for 17 plus years. So now, him being a pro athlete and being a man, where we are the type of people who you have to show us better than you tell us, the message would have landed completely different than coming from a woman who is giving him advice, but her advice has not taken root and yielded fruit in her own life in the form of a marriage, a happy, faithful marriage. And that's what I'm saying is, yes, the message can be amazing. And you, as an outsider who wants a man to get told about himself, you may not discredit the message because you're not evaluating the messenger. But the person who the message is for is going to evaluate the messenger. And if the messenger does not line up with the message that they're trying to give, then it's not going to land the way you want it to land. So that's what you got to realize and understand. So hey, God bless you. I got to go. I'm gonna have some. That's why I'm up here in New York. I'm gonna be doing some events up here, but I'm not really doing. I may do some relationship events, but I kind of like I gotta find a good event planner but event planners be charging too much money. And then the hotels and stuff, because of the pandemic, they start getting greedy and they start charging too much money. But the way I do my seminars is, for one, you can't come out if you, like a lot of the men and women that be in my comments sometimes, sensitive and in your feelings. Because I'm going to tell you the truth. The same way when you go to a comedian like Dave Chappelle or somebody, and they get up there and they speak their truth in their jokes, I'm going to tell you the truth. So you can't come sensitive. Like, you coming to hear an outside perspective, and you chew the meat and spit out the bones. Like, you take what's for you and you leave the rest. But I'm not going back and forth with you about my opinion, about my thoughts on my platform. Like, that's the point of it being my platform. I'm gonna share my thoughts, my feelings, my perception, point blank, period. And you got to, you know, don't get mad, scratch your booty and get glad. But I may do some relationship stuff. I just can't do too much right now. So, because it's my oldest son's senior year. So I gotta be home for that. So I can't really be on the road because my oldest son, 17, my youngest son is 10, and they play like every single weekend from now until like June. So I got one weekend off, October 12th and 13th, and that's when I'm doing the mental health professionals, their corporate crossover, teaching them how to build a personal brand and expand, enlarge their territory. So you'll see that in my Instagram story. And it was 2,500, but my company, my mentor.life, took and sponsored 20 people. So the first 20 people, and I think that's what we'll cap it at, is 20 people, got a $1,500 discount. So we got some people signing up for it, some therapists and counselors, because this is my thing. And this is why I try to tell y'all why it's impossible for me to be jealous of a therapist, because I reach more people than 99.9% of therapists, and I also earn more. And so what my heart is helping these therapists who have gone through all this schooling, got all this education, but paycheck to paycheck and struggling and not even making six figures, or making six figures and it don't feel like it, and reaching one person at a time versus reaching hundreds of thousands or millions, just like the therapist that y'all saw on Cam Newton's show. I've been doing that since my mid 20s, and that's why I'm teaching this class October 12th and 13th, to give away the game and to help people. So for those of y'all who was talking about, oh, Tony, you trying to discredit her. It's like, no, she discredited herself with that outfit, because it was so loud, a man can't hear nothing. I noticed every woman heard what she was saying. What that tells me is that you're not a lesbian, that you don't really process that, because you a woman. Like, women see women naked in the locker rooms and stuff like that. But as a man, a woman have to be dressed and presenting herself a certain way for us to hear what's coming out of her mouth. And so that was my point, is that all I saw was gums bumping. I didn't really hear nothing. And it's just because of how the male mind works. Point blank, period. And if you can't get that, then you got to get your life all the way together. But hey, God bless you. God bless you. Let me see here. I'm hitting the wrong button. Well, we'll talk soon. I might be able to get back on here at some point later, but we'll talk soon. See that? Somebody talking about shopping professional. Not only that, she was just on Basketball Wives saying how horny she was. And see that? I ain't even know that. But that's what I'm trying to say. So a lot of guys like Cam Newton and them, they watch that stuff. They watch that Basketball Wives. They watch a lot of that reality TV just to be tapped in and tuned in, because they in the industry. I don't even watch that. I've never seen an episode of Basketball Wives. I've probably seen a preview or something like that. But I can't even stomach a show like that. I throw up all over myself watching Basketball Wives or Atlanta House or any housewives of any city. It just be too much pettiness and drama and cattiness and just foolishness on there. So I go in there and work, and I get in and get out and go on about my business. But that's what you have to realize and understand. Hey, yeah, because I'm about to lead and y'all keep saying something else. And 7, God bless you, keep your head up.